And with that, Albert Breer, Monday morning quarterback, joining us live. So, I mean, I want to touch on the Aaron Rodgers thing. And I think Aaron's a smart guy. And I think when you're going to sign your last deal in any profession, that saying no is powerful and making the right decision. Aaron's not desperate. He's got a lot of money. And I said this 2 weeks ago. You don't want to do a Kirk Cousins where you rush and then your team drafts a quarterback. I kind of like what Aaron's doing. I think he wants to play in Minnesota, actually. What do you make of the drama? Do you think the Steelers are upset? Where do we sit now with Aaron's choice, and where are the Steelers?
Well, no, I think you're right on Aaron wanting to play in Minnesota, Colin, and the Vikings have been told as much, and so the Vikings made the decision that they are going to, at the very least, give J.J. McCarthy the entire spring and see where he's at the end of that. There's obviously some unknown coming back off the knee injury. He lost 4 months of development time. They still think very highly of him, but they again are dealing with a bit of an unknown here. And the problem for Aaron now is, are you banking on that? Are you banking on a young guy not playing to his potential over the course of the next 2 months? That's not really a plan. Meanwhile, you have the Steelers who have been patient to this point, but do you get to the start of OTAs in May, and now you're talking about a team that's really got to get a quarterback in there, because that's not a rebuilding group. Like, that's a team with a bunch of win-now players like T.J. Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick and DK Metcalf and Cam Hayward and so on and so forth. So the timing of this is a little wonky because the Steelers' timetable is completely different than the Vikings' timetable. And if he were to walk away for the Steelers and say the Steelers trade for Kirk Cousins at the beginning of May and that option comes off the table, well, he's not guaranteed that the Vikings option will be there in the middle of June. So it's a little bit of a weird spot to be in. I do think he wants to play. He's given, he's given people, he gave the Jets this indication. He's given the Steelers this indication that he does want to play in 2025. I don't think retirement's completely off the table. But the way his option's set up right now is with some wonky timing.
I look at this quarterback class, and usually I'm so fired up for the draft, and I'll watch like the Masters yesterday. I'll watch it. I'll watch the whole weekend. And I do think Cam Ward is a pretty obvious number one pick. But tell me the momentum of it. As we get to the draft, sometimes you get impulsive owners, impulsive general managers. I could see Cleveland. I said this, whenever you inherit or get a bad quarterback deal like a Russell Wilson in Denver or Deshaun Watson, the way out of it is draft a quarterback and hit on him or trade down and just accumulate a bunch of picks and hit on them so you have cheap labor for 4 to 5 years. I could see Cleveland just literally trading down, getting 12 draft picks and saying, our only way out of this, we'll get Kyle McCord in the second round. We got to get cheap. I mean, Cleveland to me is the team I can see taking a huge trade down swing. Your thoughts on that? Is there a team that scenario works for?
So here's the problem. And I think this is sort of a logistical issue when it comes to trading around in the top of the first round of this draft, is you have two guys that are seen as far above the rest of the class when you're talking about non-quarterbacks, and in Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. After that, I mean, there are 12, 15 players that a lot of teams see as virtually the same. And all of those guys might have been the 15th, 16th, 17th pick in last year's draft. So if you're Cleveland, you're looking at it and you're saying, well, if we trade down to, say, 5 or 6 or 7, that's the equivalent of trading down to 15 or 20 last year. Well, then you're going to want that sort of value coming back. And if you're going to pay that premium for a non-quarterback, do you view Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter worth that to come up for? So I just think the logistics of the way the class sets up is going to make it difficult to move around in the top of the first round. I don't think Cleveland's going to take a quarterback second overall. My guess would be right now Travis Hunter. If not, I'm almost certain it would be Abdul Carter. And then they'll double back in the quarterback position in the second or third round. I think they'd be open to the idea of moving back, but I think it would take a lot for another team to come up from even the bottom of the top 10 If that team's looking at coming up for Carter or Hunter, I don't know if they would pay a quarterback premium to come up and do that.
So Nico Iamaleava, quarterback at Tennessee, says, hey, that guy at Duke that just transferred from Tulane, he's making $4 million. I want $4 million to play for Tennessee. And so now there'll probably be a bidding war. Whether he's worth it or not, Tennessee drives $149 million in revenue last year. There's about 6 programs. Ohio State's one of them, Tennessee, Georgia. They just drive massive numbers. Texas football. Yep. And I blame the NCAA, not the kid. The reason that UFC has grown and boxing has largely died is, let's be honest, it's the people at the top. It's Dana White and no governing body that you could depend on in boxing. And so I think this is on the NCAA. They've been playing catch up with the NIL. There's not enough guardrails and guidelines and rules. I don't blame the kid. But when you talk to people about this, and he may end up a Buckeye, who knows? I mean, he's going to have a market. Does this hurt him in the eyes of the NFL?
I would say yes. And it's not like any sort of death nail, but I think from a developmental standpoint, you do question what this is going to look like. He's already through spring practice, so he's going to be jumping on a moving train with another team. He was a good, not great player at Tennessee last year. He's got talent.
Yes.
But does that mean he's going to be a 5th or a 6th round pick or a 5th or 6th pick in the draft? I think a lot of that is still to be determined because he is so young and he doesn't have a lot of experience. Then, of course, there's the bigger picture question here, which is if this guy gets to a point 3 years into his career, 4 years into his career where he's not happy with his contract, how quickly does he start making noise about that? Because this isn't the first time we've heard about this sort of stuff from Nico. It actually happened the first time when he was in high school. How are you going to manage the people around him? Those would be questions for any player. And those questions are asked at a higher level when you're talking about the guy who's supposed to be the tone setter for your entire organization at quarterback. So, I think this does affect the way that the NFL will look at Nico. Obviously, a lot's going to ride on however he plays at UCLA or wherever else he winds up. And a big part of it is because he is a quarterback and because quarterbacks are held to a higher standard. So I think there's a whole set of new questions that NFL teams would have for Nico that they didn't have a week ago. Now, that said, the good news is he still has 1, 2, 3 more seasons to clean all of that up.
Yeah.
He'll have a full draft process to take care of it whenever he comes out. But certainly it just feels to me like the waters have gotten a little bit more murky on what this kid would be as an NFL prospect.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I watched a lot of Tennessee football games. I like him. I think he's super talented. I think it's like watching a young NBA prospect where you're like, he doesn't have his jumper down, but boy, there's a lot there.
Here's a good example, Colin. This is what Cam Ward was last year. Like there were a lot of these things going on with Cam Ward with his transfer from Washington State to Miami last year. And there were a lot of people around him and a lot of questions with that, right? He played so well, it didn't matter. Like if he had come out last year, he probably would have been a 5th or 6th round pick. You saw the flashes of what he wound up becoming at Miami, but they were few and far between. He got around better teammates and a better program. And all of a sudden he became way more consistent with what he was doing. And now that NFL teams have had the chance to sit down with him and talk with him, they've become more comfortable with him. Obviously, the Titans are pretty comfortable with where they're at, potentially taking him first overall. So you can come out of this and look great, but it takes handling the situation the way Cam Ward did. And whether or not Nico can do that remains to be seen.
By the way, the of all the movement and, social media has created some cryptic posts, and TJ Watt had a little bit of one. And I don't think this is crazy to say this. I have suggested this, is that I think the Kansas City and Rams model is kind of the way to do it, which is pay for your offense, draft your defense. You can pay for a great pass rusher, a Myles Garrett, or maybe a TJ Watt or a Chris Jones, but mostly keep your defense young and twitchy. That side of the ball gets hurt more. Keep them young and athletic. Pay for your quarterback, left tackle, star receiver, center. Bears doing this, by the way. They paid some money for offense, and I think it will pay dividends. The Steelers, Cincinnati. That's the way to me is the way to do it is just draft defense. When you see the little cryptic TJ Watt social media post. Generally, that stuff has legs. I'm sorry, but there is a smoke fire thing. The Watt family isn't going to just make stuff up to tweak their employer. What did you make of that?
Well, one thing I've learned is to never not pay attention to this stuff, right? Because, I mean, these guys are so cognizant of it. I mean, at this point, most of the guys in the NFL grew up with it, right? Like grew up with social media in a way that you and I didn't, Colin. And so they're very savvy and have an understanding that everything they say and do is going to have a reaction, especially somebody who's been in the NFL for as long as TJ Watt has. So I think you'd be dumb not to look at this and think that this isn't some kind of message that he's trying to send to the Steelers. That said, when you open your calendar book, what does it say? It says April, right? Like, so they've still got a lot of time to work this out. Obviously, I think it's like a little bit of a window into where the Steelers are. And I think it's part of why Aaron Rodgers does match up well with the rest of the makeup of the roster and much better than he did with the Giants. And you and I have talked about this before. The Giants were basically asking Aaron Rodgers to do what the Jets asked him to do, which was lift a group of young players up and take a group of young players to the next level. Whereas with the Steelers, he's got a bunch of players who are as close to peers as you're going to get for Aaron Rodgers in the NFL. And guys like Watt and Fitzpatrick and Hayward and Metcalf, guys who are on their third contracts or in their 30s. And again, like this is sort of a window into where the Steelers are, the way the Watt situation is playing out, where, you know, you've got a lot of guys that either are in the last bite of the apple or are looking to win right now. And so, you know, the Steelers obviously have a lot to work through here. I'd assume the TJ Watt thing gets taken care of in time. This is an early warning shot that things might not be in a great place, but they've got a lot of time to work that out. And I think getting some clarity at the quarterback position will probably help Watt get a little bit more comfortable with signing up for some more in Pittsburgh as well.
All right, Albert Breer on a Monday. Appreciate you stopping by, my man.
All right. Thanks, Colin.